You're listening to episode 5 of the Air Hug Community Podcast, coming to you straight from a stack of encyclopedias. You're listening to the Air Hug Community Podcast. I'm your host, Judy Arizosa, and on this podcast, I bring you conversations and stories from guests and myself that inspire us to thrive on a higher level. We talk about things like relationships and habits for optimal health and how we see the world. Whether you are a mother or an other, the Air Hug community is here to help you realize that improving the lives of others will boomerang back to you exponentially. And remember, not to be too serious. Life is better with a daily dose of smiles and air hugs. Well, hello there, everybody. I am coming to you straight from a stack of encyclopedias that have become my stand-up desk. I don't know about you, but I like to go back and forth between standing and sitting, and right now, standing is winning out. So anyways, let's get on with it, all right? It's a fine day for a little chat about our identity. And so I'm going to begin today with a little story. So I've been thinking a lot about tennis lately because when my kids were small, I really enjoyed playing tennis as an activity and a hobby and whatever. And as the kids got older and they got into quite a bit of their own sports and activities, tennis kind of took a back seat for a while, which was fine. It was no big deal. But I was reminded about some of the stories and thoughts that I had while playing tennis because recently we went on a family vacation. We rented a house and there was a tennis court on the property, and we played a lot of tennis. And I was just laughing because so many little thoughts about tennis came up. And the big one was, especially if I wasn't playing well, I would say, and if I was playing well too, I would say, you know what? Wait a minute. Nobody's going to write the score on my gravestone. And that would always make me laugh. And I'd be like, yep, it's a good time. It's fun. Sure, I'm a little bit competitive, and so is my family. And so were my tennis friends back in the day. But the truth of the matter is that number, that score, excuse me, that score had nothing to do with my identity. And I know, like, sometimes there would be people who would be so adamant about if a ball were in or out. And I'm like, whatever you want, just take it. I don't care. It's fine. It's not that important. And so I just want you to keep that in mind because I'm going to move on to something else, but still regarding our identity. Have you ever seen those little name tags that say, hello, my name is, and then you're supposed to like use like a fancy marker and write your name in? Imagine for a while that you are wearing one of those name tags. You're in a room full of people at some event that's important to you, or just some big event. Maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's a networking event or something. And you imagine to have this on, and it's, hello, my name is size XYZ, and my number makes me feel blank. So that's pretty silly, right? And what I'm trying to say is your identity is not the score of your tennis match. It's not the size that you're wearing. And it's not dictated by your age or a number on the scale. And maybe we think that we know better, right? Maybe. But how many of us are haunted by numbers? It's a very common remark that I get. And I know you're going to see a lot of these in episodes. I get a lot of my inspiration from comments that are said during our in-person sessions and our comments in our Zoom sessions afterward. And one of the very common remarks that we get in our sessions is that someone's having a good day or a bad day based on the number on the scale. And I'm sure that all of us at one time or another have been on a diet. And so, of course, when you've been dedicated to that diet for X number of days, and you get on the scale and all of a sudden you see the number moving the direction you want, you're like, okay, this is a good day. Or maybe if the opposite happens, maybe your thought is, oh, this is a bad day. And if it's a fleeting thought and you're like, maybe the whole day doesn't have to be based on that number. Maybe it's like, okay, some of my behaviors were on the better side, and look, there's a reflection of it on the scale. Or maybe some of my choices were not in consistent effort with how my best body is going to be, that kind of thing. So that's fine and good. It's not a big deal. Here's where the problem comes in. The problems comes in when someone is maybe a chronic dieter, or they're chronically obsessed with having a certain size, or they have a fear of growing old, where they're fearing a number or of any one of those things. And then they start to think that their worthiness depends on some predetermined number that has been conjured up in their brain, or maybe a predetermined number that they saw somewhere. Even the movie Mean Girls, of course, that's a really great example because everything about that movie had to do with like your identity. And the Mean Girls, I still remember this line. They were like, I think it was Mean Girls. There were a couple of girls talking, and the one girl was like, well, how much do you weigh? And she spit out a number. I don't even know what the number was. And the other one was like, well, I think it was like a reasonable number for like a young girl. It was not like a horrendous number. It was like, oh, all right. And she's like, oh, well, that's okay. I weigh. And of course it was something less. And she's like, but don't worry about it. I still like you. And I'm like, what the heck? But okay, that was the whole theme of the whole movie right there. Could have been boiled down to that number, which is, you can laugh about it, but I think for many people it's gone too far, and it's become our worthiness, and when our worthiness, our contentment is not based on a number. Our contentment needs to be based on something else, and that something else is unconditional love. So going back to tennis, and I witnessed this and I've been guilty of this, I'll take a shot and it goes way out, and I'm like, I suck. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't suck. The shot sucked. There's a very big difference there, but your brain doesn't know the difference. So we have to be very careful with our brain, because our brain is very literal. And it's funny because I've often been accused of being very literal. Like people will have, and it kind of happens like every time we go out to dinner, someone will have something that's kind of I don't know, I can't think of a great example about like a reference to something, but it's not literal, but I'll listen to it literally. And I'm like, wait, what? I don't get it. But so in tennis or in anything in life, when let's say you step on the scale that day and the number's not, within the range of your acceptable whatever, it doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means that your behaviors didn't support the outcome. That's all it means. And what's the big deal? Maybe you're bloated or constipated or whatever. But the problem is that our brain, when we talk to our brain like that and say, I was good today, I was bad today, your brain is very literal. And if the word is bad, you're going to go down a rabbit hole of continual bad things and you're just going to have a bad day, which will lead into a bad week, which will lead into a bad month, and so on down the line. So I'd like to think back to a quote that I'm sure all of you have heard, and it's attributed to, now I can't really say the name here, but I'm going to try. I looked up 3 different ways to say it. It's Lao Tzu, Lao Cha, or Lao Tza, but it's Laotzu, and she, it. By the way, some people think this is a mythical conglomerate of several spiritual figures back to, I think, 6th century China. But let me get to the quote. So the quote is, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions. They become habits. Watch your habits. They become your character. Watch your character because it becomes your destiny. And so way back with the thought becomes your destiny. And so I just want to mention this because I think this is something that's been going on, especially in women. I can't speak for men, but I talk to a lot of women about this. And it pains me to see people saying, they're having a good day or a bad day. I literally had someone quote this to me. She was going through a very, very hard time in her life. And she said that she would get on the scale every day and her puppy would be next to her, her little dog. And she'd say, okay, Rover, I don't remember the dog's name, so we're going to say Rover, is today going to be a good day or a bad day? And then she'd step on the scale and literally her decision for that entire day was based on that number. And so I think we have to get away from that. Let's remember that our worthiness is never dependent on a number, and it is dependent on learning to love ourselves unconditionally. And maybe this is an overstated topic. I think it's a very popular topic, but it doesn't make it any less important. And there was a wonderful book. Okay, I don't have it in my notes, but I think it's called Love Myself by, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but it's either Love Myself or I Love Myself by this guy who was actually like a successful Silicon Valley person. And he actually left his whole career and wrote this book, and this became his being. You can listen to it on Audible in maybe 2 dog walks, maybe 2 afternoon walks, and you'll be done. It's a short book, but it's profound. And it talks about talking to yourself, thinking to yourself, using the thoughts and words that support self-love, and how this was pivotal in this author's life. And I'll read it every year or two when I'm getting if I'm getting down about myself. It's a fabulous book. I will put it in the show notes, but it definitely follows that path of watch your thoughts and be careful of your thoughts. So remember also that our size is never a sin. What we ate is never a sin. Sins are far more serious than that, if you even believe in sins, okay, or offenses or whatever. And I'm going to go back to a number of years in advertisement in a catalog shopping back in the day with actual where you turn pages. I used to get the Land's End catalog in the mail, and I would look forward to looking at it, and I would get my little maybe mom casual clothes, my turtlenecks. I was very into turtlenecks at one point in time, and maybe some clothes for my kids. And there were these pants, which I never did buy, by the way, but the whole commentary about these pants is that they would forgive your sins. And me being literal, I'm like, how can a pair of pants forgive your sins? And then I was like, oh, they mean eating chocolate cake or whatever, or eating something you weren't supposed to eat. And I was like, you know what? I closed that catalog and I'm like, that's just dumb. It is just dumb. But I wonder how many pair of pants they sold because of that, because it felt like it would forgive sins. I'm like, that is just ridiculous. So I'm going to keep this short, sweet, and concise, but I have to share one more thing with you. There is something that has been popping up, and I really feel like it's a sign, popping up in my social media feeds over the last week. The exact quote has popped up on 3 different accounts. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening, God. You must really want me to get this message if it's been delivered independently by 3 people. So it's, think of your mouth as a gatekeeper. And before you speak, make sure that what you're speaking is true. Ask yourself these questions. Is what I'm about to say true? Is what I'm about to say kind? And is what I'm about to say necessary? So if you're about to talk to yourself about something regarding your either physical, emotional, or mental being, think of those 3 things first. Do they pass the test? And if they don't pass the test, forget about it, lady. and gentlemen. Okay? All right. So, I don't know. I like the gatekeeper saying, I just really feel that this has been a huge, huge topic, another topic that comes up weekly. And the whole reason I jotted these notes down was because it literally happened in our gym last week. Somebody was talking about their identity in terms of a number. Oh, and another thing that they were talking about, it was actually, that I have a clothing wear brand, and that's another story. But I talk to a lot of people about sizing, and I've learned a lot about people making no assumptions, but just observations. There are some people who have gotten very upset with the actual brand because the size they want to wear is not the size that fits them. And I have had more than a few people return something because, okay, like 3 people have returned something because they're like, well, I refuse to wear a size different than number XYZ. And so it can't possibly be true. And I'm like, again, are we writing this size on your gravestone? Are you somehow wearing your clothes inside out so all the world can see your size? Like, what is the big deal? If they feel good and they fit good, who cares what the number is? I mean, my size ranges sometimes between like 4 different sizes, depending on the style and the manufacturer of whatever it is, and it just doesn't matter. We're not writing your size, your weight. Okay, maybe we're writing your age on your gravestone, but so what? I figure every day that we wake up is a good day, whether we're 31 or 81. I don't know. I hope to wake up someday and be 81. I don't know about you. But if you have any questions, I'm going to put in the show notes the link to that book by Ramil Kavitant. And I want you to think about your thoughts today and how you can make them influence your destiny in a way that you can be content. Hey, thanks so much for listening. I would really appreciate it if you would hit subscribe and leave a review. It goes such a long way for keeping this podcast up and running. And how about one more favor? Grab a screenshot of this and share it on social media, and you can tag me and also use the hashtag AirHugCommunity. Until next time, be a friend to others and air hugs to you.